Admiral Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the sky change color. The massive alien ships were coming down through Earth's clouds like falling stars, but much slower and much bigger. Each ship was the size of a city, and they glowed with a strange blue light that made the afternoon sky look like it was underwater. The radio crackled with reports from around the world. Similar ships were appearing over every major city on Earth. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, all at the same time. All perfectly coordinated. Jake had been in the military for 20 years, and he had never seen anything like this. Doctor? Lisa Martinez rushed onto the bridge, carrying a tablet full of readings. She was the best scientist they had for studying alien life, even though, until today, there had been no alien life to study. Her hands shook a little as she showed Jake the numbers on her screen. Hey, the energy signatures are off the charts, she said, but they're not weapons, at least not pointed at us. It's more like they're scanning everything, but very gently. The ships stopped moving when they reached about a mile above the ground. They just hung there in the air without making any sound. People all over the world stood in the streets looking up at them. Some were scared. Some were excited. Just confused. Then the messages started coming. The first transmission reached Earth exactly 3 hours after the ships arrived. It came through every radio station, every television channel, every internet connection at the same time. The voice was calm and soothing, like a teacher talking to children. "People of Earth," the voice said, "do not be afraid. We come in peace and friendship. We're the Zephyrians, and we represent the Galactic Protection Consortium. We have been watching your world for a long time, and we believe you are ready to join the greater community of civilized species." Jake looked at Lisa, and she looked back at him with wide eyes. This was really happening. First contact with alien life, and they were talking about some kind of galactic government. The voice continued. "We know you have many questions, and we will answer them all. We invite your leaders to meet with us so we can explain why we have come and what we can offer your species." Within 6 hours, every world leader was on a plane to New York. The aliens had specifically requested to meet at the United Nations building. Jake was part of the security team assigned to protect the meeting. He stood in the corner of the great assembly hall watching history unfold. The Zephyrian delegation walked into the room, and Jake had to admit they were impressive. They looked almost human, but taller and thinner, with skin that seemed to change color slightly as they moved. Their leader introduced himself as High Counselor Veltar, and his voice was the same one that had spoken to the whole world. President Helen Carter stepped forward to greet them. She had been chosen to speak for all of humanity in this first meeting. Jake knew she was nervous, but she didn't show it. "Welcome to Earth," she said. "We are honored by your visit and eager to learn about your consortium." Veltar smiled, and it looked genuine. "Thank you, President Carter. We are pleased to finally make contact with your species. We've watched humans grow and develop for many centuries, and we are impressed by your progress." The room was completely silent. Every person there knew they were witnessing the most important moment in human history. Veltar gestured to one of his companions, who activated some kind of device. A holographic display appeared in the air above the assembly hall, showing a map of the galaxy. Thousands of star systems were marked with different colored lights. "This is the Galactic Protection Consortium," Veltar explained. "We are an alliance of over 300 species, all working together to maintain peace and safety in our galaxy. The blue lights represent member worlds. The red lights show dangerous areas that we monitor and protect against." Jake noticed there were a lot of red lights, more red than blue, actually. "For millions of years," Veltar continued, "the consortium has kept younger species safe while they develop the wisdom and technology needed to survive in a hostile galaxy. We offer protection, advanced technology, and membership in a community of peaceful civilizations." It sounded too good to be true, and Jake had learned to be suspicious of things that sounded too good to be true. "President," Carter asked the obvious question, "protection from what exactly?" Veltar's expression became more serious. "The galaxy is ancient, President Carter. There are things out there that have existed since before your son was born. Dark entities that feed on young civilizations. Cosmic parasites that destroy entire species for sport. Forces that your science cannot yet understand or defend against. Dr. Lisa Martinez was taking notes frantically. Jake could see her writing down every word. These threats are real, Veltar said. Many species have tried to face them alone, and all have failed. Only through unity and protection can younger races hope to survive and thrive. The French president raised his hand. What would membership in this consortium require from us? Very little, Veltar replied. You would agree to follow certain safety protocols, no expansion beyond your solar system until you have reached the proper development level, no contact with species outside the consortium, no research into certain dangerous technologies. In return, we provide you with clean energy, advanced medicine, and protection from all external threats. Jake didn't like the sound of those restrictions. Humans had always been explorers. Telling them they couldn't explore space seemed like telling a bird it couldn't fly. The Chinese premier asked another question. How long would these restrictions last? Veltar paused before answering. That depends on how quickly your species develops the necessary wisdom. Some races have earned full membership in a few thousand years. Others have taken longer, a few thousand years. Jake tried to imagine humanity agreeing to stay locked in their own solar system for thousands of years, while aliens decided if they were mature enough to be trusted. Captain Ryan Phillips, who was standing near Jake, leaned over and whispered, "This feels like someone offering to protect your house by locking you inside it." Jake nodded. He was thinking the same thing. President Carter seemed to sense the mood in the room. This is obviously a momentous decision that will require careful consideration by all the nations of Earth. We appreciate your offer and would like to discuss the details more thoroughly. Of course, Veltar said. We understand this is overwhelming. We will remain in orbit around your world while you make your decision. Take all the time you need. But remember that the galaxy is dangerous and grows more so every day. The sooner you accept our protection, the safer your people will be. After the aliens left the room, the real discussions began. Some leaders were excited about the advanced technology and the promise of peace. Others were worried about the restrictions and the vague descriptions of these supposed threats. Jake listened to the debates and felt increasingly uneasy. Something about the whole situation didn't feel right. The Zephyrians seemed friendly enough, but they were very careful about not giving specific details. But every time someone asked exactly what these galactic threats were, the aliens would talk about ancient evils and cosmic horrors, but never actually name anything specific. Over the next few days, more meetings were held. Scientists were allowed to visit the Zephyrian ships and were shown incredible technology. Doctors saw medical devices that could cure cancer in minutes. Engineers witnessed energy systems that could power entire cities without any pollution. But every time someone asked about the threats the consortium protected against, the answers remained vague. The Zephyrians would show images of destroyed worlds and speak sadly about civilizations that had been lost, but they never explained exactly what had destroyed them. Dr. Martinez came to see Jake after her third visit to the alien ships. She looked troubled. Something's not adding up, she told him. They have all this amazing technology, but when I ask about their weapons or defense systems, they change the subject. For a military alliance, they don't seem very interested in talking about military things. Jake had been thinking the same thing. What else bothers you? They keep talking about these ancient threats, but their own history only goes back about 50,000 years. These dangers have existed for millions of years. How come the Zephyrians are still relatively young as a species? It was a good question, and Jake suspected they wouldn't like the answer when they finally found it. As he stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance that night, looking up at the alien ships floating silently above Earth, Jake Harrison made a decision. Someone needed to start asking the hard questions, and it looked like that someone was going to be humanity. 3 months had passed since the Zephyrians arrived, and the honeymoon period was definitely over. Dr. Kevin Thompson sat in his laboratory staring at a computer screen that made no sense. He was a physicist who specialized in theoretical research, and he had been given access to some of the Zephyrian databases to help humanity understand their technology. The problem was that nothing added up. Kevin had requested historical records about the galactic threats that the consortium protected against. What he got back were files full of holes. Entire sections were missing or blocked out. The parts he could read talked about ancient enemies and cosmic horrors, but never gave any real details. It was like reading a book where someone had torn out every other page. He picked up his phone and called Dr. Lisa Martinez. "Lisa, I need to ask you something. Have you noticed anything strange about the information the Zephyrians are sharing with us?" "Strange how?" she asked. "Like they're hiding something. I've been trying to research these threats they keep talking about, and I can't find any solid evidence that they actually exist." There was a long pause. "Kevin, you need to come to my lab. Right now. Bring everything you've found." Kevin gathered his files and walked across the research facility that had been set up to study Zephyrian technology. The place was buzzing with activity. Scientists from every country on Earth were working together trying to understand alien science that was thousands of years ahead of human knowledge. Lisa's laboratory was in the biology section. When Kevin arrived, he found her looking at tissue samples under a microscope. She looked up when he walked in, and her expression was worried. "I've been studying biological samples from the Zephyrian ships," she said. "They gave us permission to take some samples for research purposes. Look at this." She stepped back from the microscope, and Kevin looked through the eyepiece. What he saw looked like normal alien tissue, but there was something else mixed in. Something that looked almost like machinery, but organic at the same time. "What am I looking at?" he asked. "I think it's some kind of control device," Lisa said. "It's integrated into their nervous system. I found similar structures in every sample I tested." Kevin stood up straight. "You're saying they have machines? In their brains?" "Not machines exactly. More like biological computers. And here's the really weird part. Technology looks old. Much older than anything else we've seen from them." Kevin spread his research files on her lab table. "This fits with what I've been finding. Their historical records don't go back very far, but they keep talking about ancient threats. What if these brain devices are how those ancient threats control them?" Before Lisa could answer, there was a knock on the laboratory door. Lieutenant Colonel Susan Hayes walked in wearing her military uniform and looking very serious. Susan was in charge of analyzing the Zephyrian military capabilities, and she had been spending a lot of time studying their ships. "Good, you're both here," Susan said. "We need to talk. I've been running scans on the alien fleet, and I've discovered something disturbing." She pulled out a tablet and showed them a detailed diagram of a Zephyrian ship. "Look at the energy patterns. All their defensive systems are pointed inward toward the center of the ship. That's not how you design a warship. It's how you design a prison." Kevin looked at the diagram more carefully. Susan was right. The ship's shields and containment fields were all focused on keeping something inside the ship rather than keeping threats outside. "There's more," Susan continued. "I've been monitoring their patrol patterns around Earth. They're not watching for external threats. They're watching us. Every time one of our ships tries to leave the solar system, they move to intercept." Lisa sat down heavily in her chair. "So they're not protecting us? They're guarding us." "It gets worse," Susan said. "I've been in contact with military officials from other countries, and we've all noticed the same thing. The Zephyrians have been very interested in our population data, our agricultural systems, and our breeding patterns. Why would protectors need to know how fast humans reproduce?" Kevin felt a chill run down his spine. Unless they're not protectors at all. The three of them spent the next hour comparing their findings. The picture that emerged was disturbing. The Zephyrians had been evasive about their threats. Their own history was suspiciously short. They had control devices in their brains. Their ships were designed like prisons, and they were monitoring humanity like farmers monitoring livestock. "We need to tell someone about this," Lisa said. "Tell them what exactly?" Susan asked. "That we think our alien protectors might actually be alien wardens. We need more proof." That proof came from an unexpected source. Dr. Matt Johnson was an archaeologist who had been studying human history to see if there were any previous contacts with alien species. He had been working alone in a small office reviewing ancient texts and archaeological records from around the world. Matt burst into Lisa's laboratory the next morning carrying a stack of old books and printouts. He looked like he hadn't slept. "In days I found them," he said breathlessly. "I found references to the Zephyrians in human history." He spread the documents across the lab table. There were translations of ancient Sumerian texts, Egyptian hieroglyphs, Mayan codices, and Aboriginal, Australian cave paintings. All of them showed similar figures. Tall, thin beings with changing skin colors who came from the sky. "Look at this," Matt said, pointing to a Sumerian tablet. "This text talks about sky people who came to Earth and gathered humans into safe places. But here's the important part. The humans in the story weren't grateful. They called the sky people the shepherds of sorrow." He pulled out another document. This Egyptian text describes similar beings who promised to protect humans from great evil. The humans in this story figured out that the sky people were actually working for the evil they claimed to protect against. Lisa studied the ancient images. The beings in the cave paintings looked exactly like the Zephyrians. "How old are these?" "The oldest ones are over 10,000 years old," Matt said. "The Zephyrians have been visiting Earth for a very long time. And according to these stories, they always make the same offer: protection in exchange for compliance." Susan was reading one of the translations. This Mayan text says the sky people would take groups of humans away to safe places where they would be protected from the star devourers. But the humans who were taken away were never seen again. Kevin felt his stomach drop. Star devourers. That sounds like the cosmic threats the Zephyrians keep talking about. Matt nodded grimly. "There's more. I found similar stories from cultures all over the world. Australia, North America, South America, Asia, Africa, all describing the same pattern. Sky people offering protection, humans being gathered together, and then disappearing. But some humans obviously survived," Lisa pointed out. "We're still here. According to the stories, there were always humans who refused the protection," Matt explained. "Humans who ran away and hid when the sky people came. The stories say these humans were the ancestors of all modern people." The room was quiet as they all considered the implications. The Zephyrians had been harvesting humans for thousands of years. The only humans who survived were the ones who refused their protection and managed to hide. Susan was the first to speak. "We need to get this information to Admiral Harrison and President Carter immediately." "Will they believe us?" Lisa asked. "They have to," Kevin said. "Because if we're right about this, then Earth isn't being protected. It's being prepared for harvest." Over the next few days, the small group of researchers worked frantically to gather more evidence. They found more historical records, collected more biological samples, and documented more suspicious behavior from their supposed protectors. The breaking point came when Captain Ryan Phillips decided to test the Zephyrian restrictions directly. He took a small human spacecraft and tried to fly it past the edge of the solar system. He wanted to see what would happen if humans actually tried to leave. The Zephyrian response was immediate and overwhelming. 3 of their ships moved to intercept Phillips before he was even halfway to the solar system's edge. They forced him to return to Earth using some kind of tractor beam technology. When Phillips reported back to Admiral Harrison, his message was simple: "Sir, we're not being protected, we're being contained." The truth was finally becoming clear. Yes. Earth wasn't a planet under alien protection. It was a prison with very polite guards. And according to the ancient human stories, the prisoners were eventually taken away to feed something much worse than the Zephyrians. Admiral Harrison called an emergency meeting with world leaders. It was time for humanity to decide what they were going to do about their protectors, who were actually their captors. And according to the historical evidence, time was running out before the real threat arrived to collect what the Zephyrians had been preparing for them. The age of asking polite questions was over. Now the age of demanding real answers was about to begin. The crash happened on a Tuesday morning in the middle of the Australian desert. Major Alex Turner was leading a routine patrol when his radar picked up something falling from the sky. It was small and moving fast, and it was definitely not supposed to be there. Alex called it in to headquarters, but by the time the response team arrived, the object had already hit the ground. What they found was a Zephyrian scout ship, about the size of a small airplane. It had crashed into a rocky hillside and was badly damaged. Smoke was rising from the wreckage. "Is anyone alive in there?" asked Sergeant Kate Wilson, who was part of Alex's team. They could hear movement inside the crashed ship. Someone was definitely alive, but probably not for long. Alex made the decision to break into the ship and try to rescue whoever was inside. The Zephyrian pilot was trapped under a piece of twisted metal. He was bleeding from several wounds, and his skin was changing colors rapidly, which seemed to mean he was in distress. Alex and his team worked together to free the alien from the wreckage. "We need to get him medical attention," Alex said. "Kate, call for a medical evacuation helicopter." But the Zephyrian pilot grabbed Alex's arm with surprising strength. His eyes were wide with fear, and he was trying to say something. Alex leaned down to listen. Double quotes, not what you think, the pilot whispered. "The consortium. It's not protection. It's a lie. We're not your guardians. We're your farmers." Alex felt his blood go cold. "What do you mean, farmers?" The pilot coughed, and more of that strange colored blood came out of his mouth. "We were like you once. Proud species. Free species. We explored the galaxy and built great cities among the stars. Then we found them." "Found who?" Alex asked. "The Devourers," the pilot said. "Ancient beings older than most stars. They feed on entire civilizations. They consume species the way you consume food. We thought we could fight them. We were wrong." Kate was recording everything on her military tablet. This was too important to trust to memory alone. The pilot continued talking even though he was clearly dying. "They offered us a choice. Serve them or be consumed like all the others. We chose to serve. We became shepherds for their feeding." "Shepherds?" Alex asked, but he was starting to understand. "We find young species like yours," the pilot explained. "We offer them protection and safety, keep them contained in their home systems. We help them grow and develop until they reach the perfect stage. Then we deliver them to the Devourers." Alex wanted to throw up. "How many species have you delivered?" "Hundreds," the pilot said sadly. "Maybe thousands. I stopped counting after the first century. Each time we told ourselves it was necessary for our own survival. Each time we promised it would be the last." Kate stopped recording and looked at Alex with horror. "We need to get this information to Earth immediately." The pilot heard her and shook his head weakly. "Too late. The harvest ships are already coming. Your species has reached the optimal development level. The Devourers will arrive within months to collect what we have prepared for them." "Why are you telling us this?" Alex asked. The pilot looked up at the blue sky above them. "Because I remember what it was like to be free, before we became slaves to ancient horrors. Your species reminds me of what we used to be. Maybe you can do what we could not." "What's that?" "Fight back," the pilot said. Then he closed his eyes and died. Alex and his team stood in the desert silence for a long moment. Then Kate spoke up. "Sir, we need to get this recording to Admiral Harrison right now." "Agreed," Alex said. "Pack up everything. We're leaving immediately." Within 6 hours, the recording was being played in the highest levels of government around the world. Admiral Harrison listened to it 3 times before he believed what he was hearing. President Carter called an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council. Dr. Jennifer Cole was brought in to analyze the recording and verify its authenticity. She was a specialist in understanding alien psychology and behavior. After studying the pilot's words and manner of speaking, she concluded that he had been telling the truth. "The emotional patterns in his voice are consistent with deep guilt and regret," she reported. "This is not someone trying to deceive us. This is someone confessing to crimes he feels terrible about." The implications were staggering. Humanity had been marked for consumption by cosmic predators. The Zephyrians were not protectors, but livestock handlers. And according to the dying pilot, the harvest was scheduled to begin soon. Admiral Harrison convened an emergency meeting with military leaders from every major nation. The meeting was held in a secure bunker deep underground in Colorado. Everyone who attended had been sworn to absolute secrecy until they could figure out how to handle the situation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Harrison began, "we are facing the greatest threat in human history. It's not just to our civilization, but to our entire species." He played the recording from the crashed pilot. The room was completely silent as the alien's confession filled the air. When it finished, Several people looked sick. General Patricia Brooks spoke first. How do we know this is real? What if it's some kind of trick? Dr. Cole stood up. Analyzed every aspect of the recording. The pilot was dying and had no reason to lie. Furthermore, his confession explains all the inconsistencies we've been finding in Zephyrian behavior. What inconsistencies? Asked the British general. Dr. Kevin Thompson was called in to present his research. The gaps in their historical records, the biological control devices we found in their tissue samples, the fact that their ships are designed to contain rather than protect. It all makes sense now. Lieutenant Colonel Susan Hayes added her analysis. Their patrol patterns around Earth are exactly what you would expect from guards keeping livestock contained. They've been monitoring our population growth, our agricultural development, and our technological progress like farmers checking on their crops. The Chinese admiral looked grim. If this is true, how long do we have? Admiral Harrison consulted his notes. According to the pilot, months, not years. The harvest ships are already on their way. Harvest ships? French general asked. The Devourers themselves, Harrison explained. The beings that the Zephyrians serve. Ancient creatures that feed on entire civilizations. The room erupted. In discussion, some wanted to confront the Zephyrians immediately. Others wanted to prepare defenses. A few suggested trying to negotiate. Admiral Harrison called for quiet. Before we decide on a course of action, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Dr. Martinez, what have you learned about these Devourers? Dr. Lisa Martinez had been studying every reference to the Devourers that they could find. In Zephyrian databases, from what I can determine, they're beings that exist partially outside normal space and time. They feed on the life force of entire species. According to Zephyrian records, they've been doing this for millions of years. How do they feed? Asked General Brooks. From what I understand, they consume not just the physical bodies, but the consciousness, the culture, the very essence of what makes a species unique. When they're finished, it's as if that species never existed at all. The weight of this information settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Humanity was facing extinction. Not just as individuals, but as a concept. Everything humans had ever accomplished, every thought they had ever thought, every dream they had ever dreamed would be consumed and forgotten. Captain Ryan Phillips, who had been quiet during most of the meeting, finally spoke up. So what do we do about it? Admiral Harrison looked around the room at the faces of Earth's military leaders. We have two choices. We can accept our fate like apparently every other species has done, or we can fight. Fight beings that have been consuming civilizations for millions of years? The German general asked. With what? Our technology is thousands of years behind theirs, A.B. Harrison said. But we have something that apparently no other species. Hazad, what's that? General Brooks asked. Harrison smiled grimly. We have advance warning. Every other species was caught by surprise. They didn't know what was coming until it was too late. We know. We have time to prepare, and we have something else, which is we're humans, Harrison said simply. Humans have never been very good at accepting that some fights can't be won. The meeting continued for hours as they discussed options and strategies. By the end of it, they had reached a consensus. Earth would not go quietly into the cosmic night. If the Devourers wanted to harvest humanity, they were going to have to fight for every last person. The age of being protected was over. The age of protecting themselves was about to begin. And the universe was about to learn that some species refused to be anyone's dinner, no matter how ancient or powerful their predators might be. President Helen Carter stood in front of every television camera on Earth. She had been practicing this speech for 3 days, but her hands still shook as she held the papers. What she was about to tell the world would change everything forever. Fellow human beings, she began, I speak to you today with news that will shock and frighten you. But I also speak to you with confidence in our ability to face any challenge together. In living rooms and offices around the globe, people stopped what they were doing to listen. Something in the president's voice told them this was important. 3 months ago, we welcomed visitors from space who promised to protect us. Today, I must tell you the truth about these visitors. They are not our protectors. They are our captors. And we are not being prepared for membership in a galactic community. We are being prepared for destruction. The president went on to explain everything they had learned. The dying pilot's confession, the evidence of ancient harvests, the approaching devourers. She spoke for 20 minutes, and when she finished, the world was silent. Then the panic began, but it didn't last long. Humans had faced extinction before, and they had always found a way to survive. Within hours of the president's speech, people were volunteering to help. Scientists offered their knowledge, engineers offered their skills, and ordinary citizens offered whatever they could do to help humanity fight back. Dr. Lisa Martinez found herself in charge of the largest scientific project in human history. Her job was to figure out how to fight beings that existed partially outside normal space and time. She had laboratories in every major city working around the clock to understand devour technology. The key is understanding how they feed, she explained to her team. According to the Zephyrian records, the devourers consume the life force of entire species. But life force is just energy, and energy can be manipulated. Her breakthrough came when she realized that the devourers needed to be in the same dimensional space as their victims to feed. They have to come to us, she told Admiral Harrison. They can't consume us from a distance. That gives us an opportunity. Meanwhile, Captain Ryan Phillips was working with engineers from around the world to build weapons that could hurt beings made of living energy. It seemed impossible, but humans had always been good at doing impossible things. We need to think differently, Phillips told his team. These things aren't made of matter like us. They're made of pure energy. So we need weapons that can disrupt energy rather than destroy matter. His team developed something they called dimensional disruptors. The weapons created fields of chaotic energy that would interfere with the devourers' ability to maintain their form in normal space. It was based on technology stolen from the Zephyrian ships, combined with human innovation. Dr. Kevin Thompson was leading the effort to understand devourer movement patterns. If humanity was going to fight these things, they needed to know where and when they would arrive. They follow specific routes through space, he discovered, like highways between star systems. If we can predict their path, we can be ready for them. His calculations showed that the devourers would arrive at the edge of the solar system in approximately 6 weeks. They would expect to find a helpless human population ready for harvest. Instead, they would find a trap. But the most important work was being done by Dr. Kate Wilson in her biology laboratory. She had been studying the recordings of the dying Zephyrian pilot, and she had noticed something important. The pilot said the devourers feed on fear and despair, she told Admiral Harrison. That's not just a description. It's literally how they survive. They need their victims to be afraid and hopeless in order to consume them properly. What does that mean for us? Harrison asked. It means our greatest weapon isn't technology, Wilson explained. It's attitude. If we refuse to be afraid, if we refuse to give up hope, we can literally starve them. This discovery changed everything about humanity's strategy. They weren't just building weapons and defenses. They were building courage and determination. The confrontation with the Zephyrians happened exactly 1 week after President Carter's speech. High Counselor Veltar arrived at the United Nations building with a large delegation. He looked angry and confused. You have made a terrible mistake, he told the assembled world leaders. You have listened to lies and propaganda. We are here to protect you, not harm you. Admiral Harrison stood up from his chair. We know about the devourers, Veltar. We know about the harvest. We know what you really are. Veltar's expression changed from anger to something that looked like fear. You don't understand what you're dealing with. The devourers are eternal, unstoppable. Every species that has tried to fight them has been consumed. The only survival is through service to them. Then no species has tried hard enough, Harrison replied. Dr. Martinez stepped forward with a tablet full of data. We've analyzed your biological samples, Veltar. We know about the control devices in your nervous systems. You're not servants by choice, you're slaves. For the first time since they had arrived on Earth, the Zephyrians looked uncertain. Touched his head unconsciously as if he could feel the alien technology buried in his brain. Even if what you say is true, Veltar said, you cannot fight them. They have consumed 1,000 civilizations. They are older than your sun. They are death itself. Captain Phillips stood up next to Harrison. Maybe, but we're going to find out. You will all die, Veltar said desperately. And when you die, we will die too. The Devourers will punish us for failing to deliver you. Then help us fight them, Harrison said. Remember what it was like to be free. The room was silent for a long moment. Then one of the younger Zephyrians stepped forward. His name was Colvin, and he looked different from the others. His skin colors were brighter, and he didn't have the same defeated look in his eyes. I want to help, Colvin said. I'm tired of being a shepherd for monsters. Veltar turned on him angrily. You don't know what you're saying. The control devices will activate if we betray our purpose. Then we'll find a way to remove them, Dr. Martinez said. We've been studying your biology for months. We think we know how to disable the control systems without killing you. More Zephyrians began stepping forward. Not all of them, but enough. They were tired of serving beings that had enslaved them for thousands of years. They wanted to remember what freedom felt like. Over the next few weeks, a strange alliance formed between humans and rebel Zephyrians. Dr. Martinez developed a procedure to safely remove the biological control devices. It was dangerous and painful, but several dozen Zephyrians volunteered for the surgery. The freed Zephyrians shared everything. They knew about Devourer technology and tactics. They helped human engineers build better weapons and defensive systems. Most importantly, they confirmed that Dr. Wilson was right about the Devourer's dependence on fear. They need you to be hopeless, explained Colvin. When a species gives up, when they accept defeat, that's when the Devourers can feed most efficiently. Species that fight back, species that refuse to surrender, are much harder for them to consume. Has any species ever won? Asked General Brooks. Colvin thought. For a moment. But no species has ever had advance warning either. And no species has ever had humans helping them. The preparations continued day and night. Weapons were built, defenses were established, and most importantly, humanity prepared itself mentally for the fight of its life. Schools taught children about courage instead of surrender. Movies and television showed heroes who never gave up. Musicians wrote songs about defiance and hope. The world had become a single military unit focused on one goal, proving that some fights could be won even when everyone said they were impossible. High Counselor Veltar watched all of this with growing amazement. I've never seen anything like this, he told Admiral Harrison. Every other species we have shepherded accepted their fate when they learned the truth. They despaired and made the feeding easier, but humans seem to get angrier the more hopeless things become, Harrison smiled. That's because you don't understand humans very well, Veltar. We've been fighting impossible odds since we climbed down from the trees. It's what we do. As the 6th week approached and the Devourers drew closer to Earth, humanity was as ready as they could be. They had weapons, they had allies, and most importantly, had something no other species had ever brought to this fight. They had hope. They came on a Tuesday morning just like the Zephyrian pilot had predicted. Admiral Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the dark shapes appear at the edge of the solar system. The Devourers didn't look like ships or any kind of technology humans understood. They looked like holes in space itself, dark wounds in reality that hurt to look at directly. How many? He asked Lieutenant Davis, who was monitoring the sensors. 37 contacts and counting, sir. They're bigger than anything we've ever seen. Each one is roughly the size of a small moon. Harrison nodded. The size didn't surprise him. According to the rebel Zephyrians, the Devourers were ancient beyond human understanding. They had been consuming civilizations since before Earth's sun was born. Signal the fleet, Harrison ordered. All ships to battle stations. Today we find out what humans are really made of. The combined human and Zephyrian rebel fleet moved into position. It wasn't much compared to what was coming toward them. A few hundred ships against creatures that had destroyed 1,000 civilizations. Admiral Harrison had learned something important in his years of military service. Sometimes the size of your army mattered less than the size of your determination. Dr. Lisa Martinez was aboard the research vessel. Einstein monitoring the Devourer's approach. Her instruments were showing energy readings that shouldn't have been possible. The creatures were made of living darkness, existing partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that human science couldn't even name. "They're trying to communicate," she reported to Harrison over the radio. "I'm picking up some kind of signal." "Put it through," Harrison said. The voice that filled the bridge was like the sound of dying stars. It spoke in perfect English, but the words seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Shepherds of this system," the voice said, "we have come to collect the harvest. Prepare the feeding grounds and deliver the livestock as agreed." Harrison picked up the communication device. "This is Admiral Jake Harrison of the human fleet. Your shepherds are no longer following orders, and your livestock has decided to fight back." There was a pause. Then the voice returned, confused and angry. "Impossible. Conditioning protocols cannot be broken. The shepherds serve us willingly, and the livestock accepts its fate peacefully. This is how it has always been," Harrison said. "Today you're going to learn that some species don't read the script." The Devourer's response was immediate and terrifying. Waves of pure fear and despair washed over the human fleet. It was like being hit by concentrated hopelessness, the kind of emotional attack that had broken every other species they had encountered. But the humans had been preparing for this. Dr. Kate Wilson's research had shown them that the Devourer's greatest weapon was psychological. On every ship, in every fighter, human crews had been trained to recognize and resist the fear attacks. "Remember who you are," Harrison broadcast to the entire fleet. "Remember what you're fighting for. We are human beings, and we do not surrender." The response was immediate. Across the fleet, voices began singing. It started with one ship, then spread to another, then another. Soon hundreds of human and rebel Zephyrian voices were singing together. Old songs, new songs, songs of hope and defiance and stubborn human refusal to give up. The effect on the Devourers was immediate and shocking. The creatures that fed on fear and despair suddenly found themselves facing something they had never encountered before. Pure, concentrated, unbreakable human stubbornness. "Impossible," the Devourer voice said again, but now it sounded uncertain. "You should be afraid. You should be begging for mercy. You should be offering yourselves willingly for consumption." Captain Ryan Phillips, leading the first wave of attack ships, responded over the radio. "Sorry to disappoint you. We're human. We don't do fear very well." The battle began in earnest. The dimensional disruptor weapons that human engineers had developed proved effective against the Devourers. Energy-based forms. Each hit caused the dark creatures to flicker and lose cohesion. They weren't used to being hurt, and they definitely weren't used to fighting enemies that got more determined the worse things looked. But the Devourers were ancient and powerful. They began adapting their tactics, trying different types of psychological attacks. They showed the humans visions of their home planet being consumed, their families being destroyed, their entire species being erased from existence. The visions were horrible and realistic. Many human pilots felt their determination waver, but then they remembered something important. They remembered that they were human beings, and human beings had been facing impossible odds since they first learned to make fire. Commander Amy Foster, leading a squadron of fighter ships, watched her instruments as the Devourers tried to break through Earth's outer defenses. The creatures were getting closer to the planet, but they were moving slower than expected. Something was wrong with them. "Admiral Harrison," she reported, "the Devourers seem to be weakening. Their energy signatures are dropping." Dr. Martinez had noticed the same thing. "It's the fear feeding," she explained over the communication channel. "They're not getting the emotional energy they need from us. Instead of feeding them, our refusal to be afraid is actually starving them." Counselor Veltar, who had joined the battle despite still having some controlled devices in his brain, confirmed this analysis. "I have never seen anything like this," he said with wonder in his voice. "The Devourers draw strength from the despair of their victims, but humans are not providing despair. You are providing defiance, and defiance is poison to them." The tide of battle began to turn. The Devourers, weakened by their inability to feed properly, found themselves losing ground to the combined human and Zephyrian fleet. Ships that should have been destroyed in minutes were holding their own against cosmic predators, millions of years old. But the creatures had one last desperate strategy. The largest devourer, apparently their leader, began moving directly toward Earth. If they couldn't consume humanity through fear, they would try to devour the planet itself through direct contact. All ships, Harrison ordered, converge on the lead devourer. We stop it here, or we don't stop it at all. What followed was the most intense space battle in human history. Every ship in the fleet attacked the massive creature as it approached Earth. The devourer fought back with weapons that bent space and time. But it was weakening with every passing moment. Captain Phillips led a suicide attack directly into the creature's core. His ship was destroyed, but not before he delivered a message that echoed across the entire solar system. Tell them we said no. The sacrifice wasn't in vain. Phillips' attack disrupted the devourer's ability to maintain its form in normal space. The creature began to break apart, its dark substance scattering like smoke in a strong wind. Seeing their leader destroyed, the remaining devourers attempted to retreat, but they found something unexpected waiting for them. More human ships were arriving from the outer planets, and they were carrying something the devourers had never seen before. Hope, Dr. Wilson, had been right about the creature's dependence on fear and despair. But she had discovered something else. During the battle, just as fear could feed them, hope could actually damage them. And humans, even in the middle of the worst fight of their lives, had never stopped hoping that they could win. The surviving devourers fled to the dark spaces between galaxies, wounded and confused. For the first time in their ancient existence, they had encountered something they couldn't consume. They had met a species that got stronger when things looked hopeless, that fought harder when the odds were impossible, that simply refused to accept that some battles couldn't be won. In the aftermath of the battle, Admiral Harrison stood on the bridge of his damaged ship, looking out at the debris field that had once been the greatest threat in galactic history. Around him, human and Zephyrian crews were working together to rescue survivors and repair damaged vessels. Veltar approached him with something that might have been a smile. "You have done something that was thought impossible," the Zephyrian said. "You have broken a cycle that has existed for millions of years." "What happens now?" Harrison asked. "Now," Veltar said, "we help other species learn what you have taught us. That the greatest protection doesn't come from hiding from threats, but from standing up to them." The Galactic Protection Consortium was disbanded within a year. In its place arose something new, the Galactic Defense Alliance. Instead of keeping species locked away for their own protection, the Alliance taught them to defend themselves. The galaxy would no longer live in fear of ancient evils because humanity had proven that even the most ancient evil could be defeated by those brave enough to fight back. And whenever new threats emerged from the cosmic darkness, they would find not cowering civilizations ready for harvest, but a galaxy that had learned humanity's most important lesson. When someone promises to protect you, always ask from what, and then decide if you're willing to fight it yourself. The age of fear was over. The age of hope had begun.